Hello and welcome to episode 135 of the Boot Nerds podcast. JayMike, what's going on?
Well, things are pretty good over here, my man. Thank you. We've just had the World Cup qualifiers. It's not club football, and I'm always just happy to have club football back. And I know it's a little bit stupid because, club football equals misery right now for me. But hey, national team breaks. I'm just not a fan. I'm not a fan.
No?
But
okay.
But it is what it is. How are you doing?
Can't complain as usual.
Okay.
I feel rejuvenated in the world of football boots as of late, which I think is a good thing. I
Okay.
think there's been a lot of interesting stuff. There's been a lot of exciting stuff. There's been a lot of good stuff. Because I think the start of the year was a little bit, I was disappointed with some of the new releases, I got to say.
But isn't that just because, Edge was just a bummer?
That was a bummer. I had high hopes for those.
Yeah,
and they just didn't. Yeah. They didn't live up to expectations.
True, but yeah, you're right. We had the Futures. They were pretty. It's a nice boot. Great release. Obviously the Air Zoom Ultra, and now there's even more exciting stuff that we're gonna talk about today. We're gonna be discussing the brand new World Cup ball, the adidas Rihla. And I am totally butchering that name, and I do apologize if you speak Arabic. I don't, clearly. But we're going to talk about that today, get some initial reactions on it, and maybe also compare them to a few of the older World Cup balls, which I have here next to me. But Josh, before we get started on that, do you remember what we talked about a couple of episodes back with the brands copying each other?
Yes.
Okay, that's good because here today I have another example of that. It just dawned on me right before we started shooting. So today is obviously we shoot a few days before this drops. Today is the day that Nike released their brand new Progress Pack, and it looks like this, right? Mm-hmm. So that's cool. We can talk about that in a second. But the funny thing is that Mizuno a couple of days ago released this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what you're saying here, but to me they look exactly the same.
It's a very strange coincidence that they both drop in this like frozen blue ice color at the same time.
Like I'm looking at the color here, and it is more or less the exact same color knit, the exact same, and they both have blue and yellow accents somewhere on the boot. This is, I know, it's borderline ridiculous at the moment. They're both cool looking boots, not gonna complain, but I just thought, that's odd. What do you say?
It's a strange one for sure. But I really like both of the colorways, especially the Mercs. I think that's a very good looking colorway for the Merc.
It's a cool colorway. Side swoosh, always love that. And all these little like different colored and oddly placed swooshes look just cool. Just cool. Has this cool optical effect to them. I like it.
Yeah, to me it's kind of like a Dragonfly version with the new graphics.
Oh, I get what you're saying. Yeah,
it's kind of what it reminds me of.
And the blueprint design just is it there's a lot of options with this. Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty cool. The Mizuno is definitely not my favorite colorway of the Morelia Neo 3, but it's not bad either.
Yeah, I'm not in love with them. I think the pre-future colorway was much nicer.
I agree. I definitely agree. But hey, I'm not going to complain. I just thought it was like funny. I opened the Progress Pack boot and was like, I've seen this before, haven't I? And I've seen it before recently. And turns out I had. But that was just a small little curious thing because Josh, the adidas Rihla, or however you say it, the new World Cup ball. Mm-hmm. What is your first impression here?
Two first impressions. I like how it looks.
Mm-hmm.
Second impression is, in an era of football design where it seems like everything was getting more modern, trending towards less panels, trending towards kind of this story behind how they came up with the certain panel shape, this to me just looks like I thought of when you make a snowflake. You fold up the paper, you cut it up a couple times into some random triangles, and it all connects to each other. That's kind of what my impression was of this. It's like, it looks cool, but it looks like they designed a football mainly just to look cool rather than on its functionality. And granted, at this point in time, I've yet to use it. I'm just going off of pictures. But I was surprised that the triangular, or I guess there's a triangle panel and a four-sided shape. It's just the pattern of the panel seems very generic, which I thought was interesting.
And this is the thing, and actually they're not generic. See, at least that's the press release says that they're inspired by obviously the Qatar flag that has this almost like triangular split down, almost tear down with that burgundy and white. But it's also inspired by the sails on these dhow boats, which is a general term used for many different types of boats in that region. And here's the thing: they do also say that the larger edge areas of edge area, whatever you call that. Mm-hmm. I have it in my mind in Danish, but that definitely doesn't translate well to English right now. But the larger edges here means that you have a more stable flight. I'm just thinking, was that something they found out after the designers has sat down and said, oh, look, that's cool. Triangles resonates well with Qatar, the flag, and the dhows? Or did the engineers come up and say, look, guys, we have a solution for a more stable flight. Triangles, do something with it. And the designers were just like, okay. Wow, the flag in match. So I don't know in which order this happened, but I have an inkling feeling that the design, so the shape of the panel came first from like the designer point of view, and not from the engineer who thought this is going to be better aerodynamically.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I'm going into this podcast pretty blind. All I've really seen is a couple pictures of the ball, and that's about it. I haven't read anything, but to me, it's very interesting for them to preach what is kind of more or less the AeroTrack groove system from Nike in terms of having those little dips with it between basically in the seams of the different panels as they connect to each other. And that's like, if you look back in World Cup match ball history, that was really the flaw of the Jabulani, where all of the panels were, the seams are so minimal that the surface of the ball is almost completely smooth, which does cause it to fly through the air in somewhat wonky ways, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
But
that's fair.
I think what I can say about the Jabulani is it's a design that seems to be based on the science of a football rather than a design inspiration based on how they wanted it to look. And that's, after hearing what you just told me about this new match ball, I kind of take issue with them over the years pushing all of these new technologies in terms of panel shape and all that stuff. And then now that we're in 2022, let's design a football based on a visual design element, and then hopefully it works out in the end. To me, it's a backwards way of doing things, because I feel like you have to look at these big football brands at this point as kind of technology companies. And this doesn't seem like it was designed from a technological standpoint first.
I just got to make it really clear that I don't know if that is indeed the case. I don't know what came first. So it might be that the technical side of things came first. And I know that they always go down, they work on the bladder, they work on the the casing and all that stuff. So I'm not sure. It just feels like a bit of a coincidence to me that there's both this design story around the panels, but also the whole functional side of things. And I just have a hard time believing that just, it just magically came together. So there must have been, one of the departments must have brought a direction and said triangles, diamond shaped. They're basically not triangles actually, but these diamond shaped panels, right? That's what we're going to go with.
And look, I don't want to throw Adidas under the bus here, because we see this from all the brands. I think a good example of something similar was the Phantom GT, the original, with the generative texture across the entire upper, and then the Nike swoosh that they slapped right in the middle of it all just had the most generic texture pattern ever. So is the Nike swoosh the ideal texture for the sake of control in that exact shape? No, they just put their branding on there. And that to me is, I don't know, I have a hard time believing that the ideal design that they decided to come up with also happened to be inspired by multiple visual elements that are associated with Qatar.
Sure. With that said, I would also, when I just look at the ball, I would say definitely design came up with this panel shape. When you start playing with it, though, I would be leaning more towards the actual engineers, the performance-oriented people at Adidas coming up with the panel shape. Because I do feel that compared to the Telstar, there is a difference in how stable it feels. There's definitely no question that we're still talking about an Adidas World Cup ball, and that means that ever since 2006 with the Team Geist, it is a lively football, and it has been for that long. I think with that, the Jabulani, the Brazuca, Telstar was also pretty lively, and it still is. It can still move. But like I say in my review on Unisport, it feels like it's trended a little bit more towards the stability, the reliability of the Select Brilliant Super, whether intended or not, meaning that it's still fast, but it just feels like, it takes a little bit more to activate that speed, that craziness. So you can still get it to move, and it can move just about as crazy as every other football out there. But it just feels like the threshold of when it starts to do that is a little bit. Is that bigger or smaller? What do you say?
It requires. I think what you're trying to say is that if you want that knuckle effect, your technique is going to be more dependent. You have to have good technique to activate that effect. And it's kind of just occurring to me now. And I feel like my perspective of football design has just changed in the last 25 seconds. Because you going over what's in that press release and Adidas stressing how the flight is more stable because of longer edges, breaks within the smoothness of the upper, and that kind of leading to what you're describing is more of a traditional feel in a football. I've always associated flight and feel of a ball to the shape of the panels, where a 32 panel traditional construction tends to feel a certain way and typically fly the most predictably.
Yeah.
It's stable. If you kick it straight, it's going to go straight.
Exactly.
Where, according to Adidas, and I tend to believe them based on what we've seen with the last several World Cup balls, I'm wondering if stability and flight path has way more to do with the aerodynamics of the ball than it does the actual panel shape itself.
Oh, but I think that's definitely the case. And also when we look at the panel shape, that affects obviously the size of the edges, but also the amount and the angle of edges. Now, I'm not going to claim to be an expert at all in aerodynamics. So there might be someone out there who's going to call total bullshit on what I'm going to say now. But I think that there might definitely be panel designs, i.e. other ways of having edges and grooves and all that stuff, texture in the ball that's created by the edges of the panels that will be more aerodynamically efficient than what we're seeing on, let's say, a traditional 32 panel Select Brilliant Super, right? And it might just be that Adidas have cracked the code with this one to make it, I don't think it's as stable as the Brilliant Super, but that might also have something to do with the bladder and the carcass and everything on the inside of the ball, which is super important as well, right? But you're definitely right, and I think that's the key behind the panel design, is that it affects how the ball moves because of how much drag basically you get from the edges.
That's really interesting, because it never occurred to me that with its traditional 32 panel design, you have more edges breaking up the surface of the ball, making it less smooth as it flies through the air. Where if you look at the last several World Cup balls and a lot of footballs that have larger panel shapes, you have less edges, and the overall finish or surface of the ball ends up being more smooth. And I think the one aspect of match balls at this point that is a little bit overblown in terms of aerodynamics, maybe it makes a small difference, but I don't think it's overly significant, is the microtexturing. And that's something that looks pretty significant on this new ball. But then I think back to the Jabulani. That, I think, has some of the most significant microtexturing on any match ball ever. But that clearly was not enough to cause enough drag to make the ball fly like a football should fly.
But it's funny you should say that. Because you play golf. So you know the whole theory about why there are dimples on a golf ball, right? Mm-hmm. And if we look at the texture, the micro texture and the, I guess they call it the macro texture, because it's a little bit bigger. If you look at that on the ball compared to the Telstar, where they had all these little square knobs, I want to say, all over the ball. It had this like really tactile feel, where this feels more like what you're seeing actually on a Brilliant Super. They're not dimples, but they're these little like slightly indented. It feels like a square version of what you see on a golf ball, but less, they're not as deep. And I think that is also part of why this ball is more stable, because you get that extra, you don't get the drag, but the air grabs the ball, right? And it gets sucked around the ball, creating a much smaller vacuum behind it, meaning smaller drag. So it flies faster and it flies better. And that might also be the case on the Select Brilliant Super. And that's one of the reasons I say that this feels like this has been Select Brilliant Superized, or the Telstar has been Select Brilliant Superized, or this is a wilder, faster version of the Brilliant Super. So it's a very good direction. And I've, from what I've gathered from the Adi press release, the micro texturing, all these little indentations here, they make a big difference from my understanding. So if I was to make a list of what impacts the flight of a football, I would have absolutely no idea what matters most, to be honest.
Yeah, but I think based on that information, because again, I've never really thought about having more seams and more edges on a more traditional construction versus a more modern design as it relates to aerodynamics. And I guess that makes a lot of sense. It kind of, in my opinion, it validates the whole AeroTrack groove system that Nike's been running with on their match ball, right? Because it's larger panels, less seams, but they're artificially putting dips in the ball that kind of act as seams would to help stabilize the flight. Where if you look at the ball you're holding there, that thing it's
smooth.
Do you remember?
Smooth.
It's totally smooth. Do you remember when that ball came out?
Yeah.
Like I remember the first time we got to use it in a match, because our team didn't have one. One of the teams we were playing did, and I the first kick I was like, oh my god, what is that? That is not a football.
No, and I'm just looking at it, and obviously the panel shape is very different, and the panels seem to have different edges compared to the Rihla, but still, the edges are quite big. And so maybe the micro texturing matters more than we would think, because you have some quite big edges here. Obviously, the shape is different, but this is completely smooth. This is definitely not.
But I think even if you look at those two balls, Jay, like I think what Adidas was doing in that era of match ball, they reduced the depth of the seams. Like that ball has such a smooth finish. True. Compared, like even a Jabulani almost looks like it's one piece. It's glued so tightly and so closely together, and it made for a very modern, cool aesthetic. But I don't necessarily think that translates to performance in a football that is normal. And again, I think everyone has their own opinion on what makes a football good or bad. In my opinion, I want reliability and I want predictability. I've never been a fan of a football that dips left for no reason. That's never been my thing.
True. And I think everyone who likes the team guys, the Jabulani, are people who,
they love that.
Take shots on YouTube. Because for that, those balls are absolutely amazing. But you're right. I agree. And I think for that, the Rihla is definitely a step in the right direction, but it still has that, trademark entertaining, that wild rascal DNA that we know from Adidas World Cup balls, and I appreciate that. I genuinely think this is it's a good football, and it's probably the one I would choose. Maybe it's recency bias talking, but from a reliability and predictability, as you say, standpoint, from my experience with it, it's definitely the one I would choose for a match right now out of all the adidas balls from the last many World Cups.
Okay, that's fair.
Because it feels the most out of all the balls like the Select Brilliant Super. And it's a great thing. It's a great thing, and it's not a Brilliant Super. It's wilder and all that stuff. So like I'm actually positively surprised.
Yeah, and that's like such an interesting comparison to make on a football that has such a drastically different design.
Exactly. Which is, I mean, I'd love to hear from someone who actually know A, ball engineering, and also B, aerodynamics maybe, who could come in and explain to us who are, I mean, let's be honest, we're absolute noobs when it comes to this. We have no idea who we're talking about. I don't at least, but it would be really interesting to understand from like a neutral point of view why this feels more like the Brilliant Super than, for instance, the Telstar. The whole groove thing, I totally buy that. That you're absolutely right. The grooves are deeper here.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know, to me, I've ranted about this on my channel over the last 5 or 6 years. It's still so interesting to me how FIFA, where this is a FIFA approved ball, allows football manufacturers, Nike, Adidas, Puma, whoever it may be, to play around with what the football is supposed to be so much. Like I've mentioned this before, but it's seemingly the only sport or one of the only sports where you have so much variation in what the main object that is required to play the sport is. Like, you play tennis. I'm sure there's a big difference between a premium tennis ball and a cheap tennis ball you can buy at the dollar store.
Probably, yeah.
But I would assume that a tennis ball is a tennis ball for the most part. And you can't really say that about a football. Even from high end to low end, the variation is crazy.
What's it like in golf? Because to me, I don't play golf, and it seems all golf balls seem the same.
There's a difference in it's the materials used for the most part. You're not going to see a ton of difference in like dimple variation. It's out there, but I don't think it translates to like significant performance. I would say at the end of the day, similar to a football, if you're good at golf, you're going to destroy anybody with a cheap ball if they had the most expensive one. It doesn't matter. Right. I just think that for football in particular, I'm surprised it's not more standardized because we have seen such drastic variation over the years in terms of what gets approved.
And I know, as a pro, pros usually care a lot about details, right? As a pro, let's say Jorginho from Chelsea. So he plays with the Nike Flight in the Premier League. He plays with an Adidas ball, the Adidas Finale in the Champions League. And then up until this point, he's most likely played with a Puma ball when he's been playing for the national team. That's a lot of variation right there. And, all those 3 balls are pretty different, I would say. The Puma balls have definitely trended more towards the norm over the last couple of years. They're great balls. But still, they feel different to the Adidas Finale, which in turn feels different to the Flight. I agree. Someone should listen to you, Rand. But
I think there's a lot of people that are of the opinion that a ball is a ball. And that's fair. Like, again, I don't think that if you play with a cheap ball, your skills are going to be diminished or something like that. But like I've pointed out before, there is a reason why before a Champions League match, a team that plays in the Prem trains with the Champions League ball rather than the Premier League match ball. It's a different ball. It definitely makes a difference.
You just need to get the feel for it, right? But this is something I'm excited to get your opinion on when it drops, but also everyone on the other side of the screen's opinion if and when you get the chance to play with the Al Rihla. Obviously, I'm very excited to hear from goalkeepers as well. Because, there were even goalkeepers complaining about the Telstar, which I thought was a step forward in terms of reliability from the Brazuca. There will always be people complaining, and I foresee players complaining about the Al Rihla as well. It's gonna happen, most likely. But it's gonna be interesting to see what the general public says about the ball as well when it comes out.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm just one man. This is my opinion, but who's saying I'm right? So, final thoughts on the new World Cup ball?
I am optimistic as to how it's going to perform. I am still not in love with seemingly a design that was design first and performance and technology second.
We don't know.
We don't know that. That's my assumption.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would definitely say that I was surprised. I was a little bit nervous before actually getting the ball in hand as to how the design of the panels would feel. Not really sold on the colors just yet. I'm more of a team guys, Telstar kind of guy. You know, that black and white is just yeah. I like that design. But anyways, playing-wise, performance-wise, it feels really good. And I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. And the more I think about it, the more I want to go back and play with it, which for me is a good thing. And I wouldn't mind taking this to my club match this weekend. So you know, that for me is a good sign. Good football.
That's how Jay performs at a higher level than everybody. He practices with the team's match ball all week. And then he just switches it up on everyone, so he's the only one that's used to it.
Yeah, I should take some obscure ball and just get really good with that ball, and then just bring that to my team. Someone commented, just last comment here on my Instagram, it's basically a mitra ball, and my mind was blown because they're actually right. I mean, you know,
it does have that vibe about it for sure.
That's because of the really angular, triangular panel shape. I will say, it's not a mitra ball. This is actually a good ball. The mitra balls for me are definitely not.
And I like how it looks. I'll say that much. I've heard some people complaining about the look. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
I kind of miss the days of the more like, let's take a ball and we'll put a design that is just very distinctive. I feel like this doesn't have anything that distinctive about it. It's going to be memorable because it's going to be shoved in our face for the next year or so.
It's not bazooka.
Like that to me
it's not
has
bazooka.
a more, yeah, it's more distinctive, right? Even I think back to, was it Euro 2004 that had the light blue ball with kind of like the
Rotero,
cross?
yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's such a distinctive design.
But that was a terrible ball, mate. Terrible ball. But I know what you're saying.
I love like that to me, like it sticks in my head as being so memorable.
Or this.
That's cool too.
Oh.
Like my brain seems to remember the more simple designs more than the complex ones.
Yeah, I agree. And this is maybe why, you know, if all this jazz in the middle of the ball, like all these little, I don't even know what they are. Is it confetti? What's going on here? I don't know. But it, you know, could be flares going off, whatever. Maybe that's just a little bit too much for my brain to comprehend. If it had just been like the bigger lines, the bigger almost like arrowheads, cool. I would have been
even like I'm even thinking white ball and then just fill in the triangles with some kind of pattern.
Yeah,
that would have been cool, and it kind of would have had this modern, old school aesthetic to it.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't dislike how it looks, but it seems. Like, I feel like I've seen 10 match balls in the last 5 years that kind of have a similar look in terms of graphics.
I would agree on that. It doesn't feel like it's as unique, as different from what else is out there compared to what we've seen previously. But maybe it's just, you know, a recency bias, you know, the negative bias and saying, this is not what we know. And then in 5 years' time, it'll be super iconic. I mean, it might happen.
On the bright side, it's not a Minecraft ball.
What's wrong with the Minecraft ball?
I don't know.
This is beautiful football.
It's not bad looking. Yeah, I agree.
Come on.
I think it aged well.
Yeah. No, I like the way the Telstar looks. It's got this, but I'm also just a sucker for the team guys Europass Telstar vibe. That's just me. You know, black and white football. It's just it's nice.
I agree. I like that too.
But hey, you know, overall, I'm impressed with the Rihla. I definitely need to go and practice the name. So there I don't suppose you speak Arabic. You can correct me on the name.
No, I don't.
Okay. How would you pronounce it?
I know how to say chicken shawarma. That's about it.
Okay, I'm not gonna make you say it then. Let's move on to some questions here. We have one from Mohandas Radford Jr. who has a question that I don't know what to say here. I recently tried on a pair of Adidas Copa Mundials, and they're still good after all these years. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I noticed that the outsole is no longer officially approved by FIFA. I guess Adidas didn't want to pay the licensing fee, and they finally have a removable insole, still die cut though. I was wondering if you two boot nerds could list the 4 additional functional, non-cosmetics updates the Copa's had since 1979. And I was like, damn. This guy knows his stuff, right?
Wait. I was lost at FIFA approved outsole. Is that a thing?
Apparently it is.
I did not know that. I've never heard that before.
Exactly. I was also like, okay, we're talking levels here, different level. Removable insole, cool. Still die cut though. I don't know what that means.
Die cut means that it's, so like on a high-end football boot, the insole is kind of like molded to a perfect shape and you have the pattern on the bottom. A die cut one would be a flat piece of foam that they just cut into the shape of a foot.
Gotcha.
And then stick it in there, which is what the Copa has.
This is the first time I've heard that expression. Okay, nice. 4 additional functional updates that the Copa's had since 1979. I wouldn't know. I would assume it's something to do with the liner. Maybe some stitching.
Heel liner.
Yeah, but I would, off the top of my head, I wouldn't know, to be honest.
Here's a question for you. I don't know the answer either. What's the oldest pair of Copas that you've had in your hands?
I don't know, to be honest.
That's a good question, right?
It's a good question. I mean, I've probably had one like mid-90s in my hands, but obviously I don't even remotely remember what that feels like.
Yeah,
or felt like.
Me too.
It's like, I think, I think we're talking like 2010 or something like that, where,
Yeah, but that's what I was about to say. The last pair that I've worn was probably from 2010.
Yeah. And I haven't worn Copas for ages. I'll hold my hands up and say, maybe it doesn't sound right, but I haven't worn it for I don't know how long, to be honest.
But yeah, I don't want to just jump on the bandwagon of the quality's gone downhill for all football boots, but I can't imagine that the Copa has gotten better over time in terms of quality.
No?
Even if it's just the material that they're sourcing. Do you think it's to the same standard as it was 20 years ago?
Some things definitely, I think, are better. Like technology, just when we're talking liners, I can only imagine that, liner material has just gotten better over time. Mm-hmm. It's gotten more durable, it's gotten lighter, thinner, and I'm just assuming here, right? But maybe the quality of the leather is not the same. I don't see why it shouldn't be, but, just like Mizuno have kept making all these revisions to the Morelia 2s. I would understand why Adidas would do the same to the Copa, but as for the actual functional updates, my hand is, please enlighten us. You've piqued my curiosity, but I do genuinely not know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
No,
I have no idea,
and it's a little bit of a defeat for me. But it also shows that we're only novices still. In this game. So that's good. Please enlighten us if you see this. Kian Benson, hey Jay and Josh, can you guys do a review of the women's Puma Ultra 1.4 and how they compare to the standard men's version? Fit, shape, feel, fit, shape, feel, etc. I've noticed that the sole plate on the women's use conical studs instead of the regular bladed studs, and I don't have the women's Ultra 1.4. It's not even released yet, I think. I only have the 1.3s. Do you have the 1.3s?
Yeah.
Have you seen the
I have not had a pair in my hands or on my feet, but I am familiar with it. So the outsole, that when they launched the Puma Ultra 1.3, they really emphasized the women's variation more than they did the men's variation. Where the women's model, if you have the two side by side, I don't think they look that different in terms of shape, but you'll notice that it doesn't have the external heel counter. And they introduced this sole plate and stud pattern that they insisted was specific for women and the women's game and women's style of play, or whatever that means to Puma, that's what they preached.
Yeah.
To me, that kind of all went out the window when they introduced the same sole plate on the King Platinum 21 as a men's football boot.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know how much that all actually matters at the end of the day, but I don't know what the difference is in terms of fit.
I think, in terms of fit, that it's different. So the women's boot is tighter. There's less volume in the midfoot. The opening is a little bit smaller as well. And for me, it's definitely the better option out of the two, because it fits my relatively shallow and narrow foot a little bit better. So the shape is significantly different compared to the men's version, where I usually, I've complained a little bit about having too much volume in the toe box. It's a little bit too boxy for me. And that might be because of my foot shape. So I spoke to the Puma designers about this, and they said that definitely from how I described my foot, the women's boot was the right one for me. So apparently I have women's feet. And I think they're right. This definitely feels more of what I want the Ultra to feel like, but I just can't get over the King tooling. Like if this had the normal Ultra tooling, I totally would have rocked that. But because of the shape that they wanted, they had to use the King tooling, because that gave that gave the boot a different shape. It had the capabilities the abilities that they wanted on the women's version. So they kind of had to use that.
So I mean, I think the conclusion here is the shape is the biggest difference that you're going to be able to feel.
Yeah.
However, I think when you're talking about the quality of the outsole, especially when it comes to feel and performance, the men's version is just much better.
It's
better. Much lighter. It's a better sole plate.
If you're looking for speed, at least. Obviously, this has better rotational maneuverability and it's a bit more stable. So if that's your game, cool. But it is what it is. Feel, they feel similar. Upper feels exactly the same.
Yeah.
But for me, the feel was a little bit better because the boot felt more connected to my foot because of the fact that the shape was better for my foot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Juan G. I guess the reason brands don't make AG boots available everywhere is because for most part they should be cheaper. You get more money out of an FG boot. But what people mostly play on is turf ground, and those should be even cheaper than the AG. So yeah, it's a money thing. And I'm not really sure I agree, to be honest. And I brought this up because it says you get more money out of an FG boot. These days, mate, I'm not sure. To me, I actually think, if you can only buy one pair of boots and you play on both surfaces, I'd go AG. You can tell me if you agree in a second. But I would go AG, and I would take one of the AG toolings that are maybe just straight up FG boots or that have been modified to fit AG. So not the Pumas, because they're FGAG, but they're FGs. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But I would see if I can find like a Nike AG Pro tooling that has, it feels more like an FG pair of boots, but with the rounded hollow studs. So if you go Mercurial Vapor 13 or Superfly 7, there's the Cempo, there's the GTs, they still have that. It's a great tooling, but it actually works really well on both surfaces, and you get the warranty when you play on AG. You don't lose it by playing on FG, but you do that if you take an FG boot onto AG. So I would say that's where the value really is if you play on both surfaces. Go and get one of those toolings, or the Adidas Predator AGs are also Predator AG X Speedflow is also solid. Copas don't get those.
Yeah, I'm always hesitant to say that big brands are gouging us when it comes to pricing. I think football boots are perhaps more expensive than they need to be, but I just think it's a lame discussion to have or a lame opinion to have
It's
when
like
you're
this with
saying
every
Nike
piece of
football boots are too expensive, but I'm still going to go and buy Nike football boots. You know, like,
But,
are you protesting the pricing, or do you just, you know
it's the same
what,
thing
they're
with-
too expensive, but I still really want them, so I'm going to buy them
same thing
anyways.
with mobile phones and, graphics card and
Yeah.
every single piece of technology which football boots are, that's been released in the last 30 years has probably been slightly more expensive than it technically needs to be, but there are just so many developing costs and marketing costs and all that stuff. I mean, we shouldn't underestimate that these brands spend so much money on all of the stuff that we don't see, right? So it's not just football boot specific, but I agree it's too easy to hate on the brands for that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, sales is, I have something that people want and I'm going to charge what I want for that product.
Yeah.
And if there's enough demand, then you can charge more.
Yeah.
If you decide that that's the direction that you want to go in. I fully believe that Nike could charge half as much for their top end products and sell enough that they would sell more to justify lowering the price and probably still maintain similar levels of profit. I think that's possible. But then you're talking about, are they lowering the value of the brand? There's so many other aspects that play into that. Yeah. And again, I don't want to get on any brand for gouging right now because I don't think there's one that really stands out in terms of being so much more expensive than everybody else. I think everyone is more or less at the same kind of area as far as price is concerned. The only anomaly is going to be Puma that's lower than everybody else, where I think that's a great example of, hey, you're getting more value than what you would get from Nike or Adidas because I think they perform to the same standard.
Yeah.
I don't understand the lack of AG availability in the US market, especially. I don't know what's up with that. No. I'm not sure if that's the brands directly or if that's stores not wanting to order them. But I agree with you. I don't see the argument in saying that there's more value in an FG boot or an AG boot or whatever it may be. Like, you need the equipment for the surface you're going to be playing on. Yeah. If that requires 2 pairs of football boots, then that's what it requires.
But some people just can't afford that. And if you're in that situation, I would probably get the AG version.
Yeah.
Just me. But hey, Luca Natale just appreciates me breaking into Backstreet Boys. It legit made the show infinitely better. I'm not sure Josh agrees, but it is what it is. And next time, Josh, the singing is on you. Dylan Lim, Laces and Manias. Josh likes thick boots, and he cannot lie. You other brothers can't deny. I can't even say the text right anymore. What is up with me today? It was a funny one, and I think it's been well established now that you like your boots to have a little extra on the side, right?
I don't mind a little bit of bulk. I don't mind a little bit of padding.
That's the understatement of the year.
That's
a little bit of padding, man, and then your favorite boot is just the lasers.
Oh, I love the lasers. Yeah, I'm never gonna change my opinion on that. They're awesome. Nike, bring them all back.
The bulkiest boots in the history of mankind. Wow. But yeah, I think that's definitely a spot on from Dylan right there. Johnny Z, opinions on the Adipure line. I love the looks of the Adipure True. Shout out to the Preds Absolutes as well, which is another boot that just loves because Josh loves because what is up with my wow. Shout out to the Pred Absolutes as well. You love those. Jesus Christ.
Yes. Adipure, I think looking back, I was more in love with the way they looked than the way that they felt.
The twos,
I didn't have a pair of Adipure once.
Okay.
So I can't comment on those. And that to me is aesthetically one of the prettiest football boots Adidas has put out ever. I love the look of an Adipure one.
I tend to agree, yeah.
I had a pair of Adipure 2s and hated them.
Yeah, they weren't great.
Absolutely hated them. The burrito style tongue was not my thing.
No.
I didn't like that boot.
Threes
Adipure 3
amazing either, yeah.
Was okay. I think it was an okay football boot. It was
definitely better than 2, yeah.
I don't look back at any of them and think, oh, that's the best thing ever. And then Adipure 4, I think it was cool at the time. But again, I look at the way that was designed, and I think it's almost a borderline gimmicky way of designing a leather football boot.
Why do you think that?
I like the way that they did the stitching on the upper. It had this weird balance with the thickness of the tongue.
Sure.
I didn't like how it was cut. Like the shape of the boot was more so to have an aesthetic that was similar to the Adipure 1 than actually something that fit well.
Oh, I loved them. I loved the fit of those.
It didn't feel right to me.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, it did have a funny little curve at the very toe. I liked that boot. I liked it a lot. Obviously, love the Adipure 4 as well. Absolutely fantastic pair of boots.
Sure.
Tongue, I loved it. Great pair of boots. Definitely my favorite out of the Adipures. I don't know if the 11 Pros count as Adipures.
No, the 11 Pros were unexceptional to say the least. When they stray away from kangaroo leather for your flagship leather football boot, I just despite the marketing spin of Taurus leather, like it wasn't as good as what they were doing before.
I mean, you know me. If you've ever heard me ranting about the best football boots ever, you'll know that the 11 Pro 2 SL is right on the top of my list. Right, that was absolutely fantastic. And also, I mean, I enjoyed the 3s. I liked those.
I think they were good. For me, I think with the Adipure over the years, it was never better than the Tiempo that was available at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. And the 3s were never better than the Tiempos. That's true. But I just liked them. I
always liked the Adipure line. That's the reason why I got an Adipure 2 when I was however many years old at that point when it was a current model, because I loved the way that it looked. That was the motivation more than anything. Yeah. And I never got on with them.
But you're right in saying that the Tiempos were better back then. But yeah, it was, I'd like to see that line. Well, we have Copa, but I would like to see, Copa and Adipure somehow being fused, where you have those.
I just think Adipure should come, like the name should be, I always thought that was an awesome name.
Yeah. Not
to be biased because of Pure Grip socks, but I love Adipure. I think that's such a cool name for a line of football boots. It is. And I understand that Copa Mundial is iconic. Like everybody knows what that is, regardless of whether or not you know anything about football boots. But I'm struggling to find the value in the Copa name for a modern line of football boots at this point.
I think they did something right, with the 19 and 20 pluses, but those boots also had like Adipure vibes, right? It had that, it had the purity of the leather. It actually treated the leather with respect. And I felt like, the Sense doesn't really do that to me. It feels like an over technologicalized boot, if that's even a word. But for me, that the return of the Copa with the 19 and the 20 plus had the DNA of both the Copa, but also the Adipure, like a modern interpretation of what a leather boot should be. And if they want to call it Copa, it's fine with me. But I just want to bring some of that back. The early days of the Adipure, it had something. It did something.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So we're both in favor of bringing it back somehow.
Yes.
It could even be instead of the Gloro days, it could be like that either the Copa or the Adipure becomes like the competitor to the Premier. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, that would be cool.
It would be cool. Salazar. Perhaps we will see the return of the Zoom Tech in the Tiempo line. The Tiempo Legend 10 is coming sooner than later, and 10 is a significant number for the Tiempos especially. Maybe we'll finally get what a true Tiempo is supposed to be. Kangaroo leather with the modern tech, considering that a Tiempo Legend 9 is rather simple. What do you guys think, Josh and JayMike?
I am very on board for that. Truthfully, I think that assuming that Nike is going to for sure 100% put Air Zoom Tech in the next generation of Mercurial, and if it goes as well as I think it could go, because I think it's a new enough technological element to draw a lot of people into a pair of Mercurials over their competition. If they deem it successful enough, I definitely could see Nike rolling that technology into their other lineups. And I think we saw this with the Elite Series. They showed that carbon fiber sole plate on a Vapor 4 and everyone loved it. And they're like, you know what? Let's just put this on everything. I could see it being a similar thing.
Could it also be that they're going to do something similar that they did with the Elite stuff back in the day, and they had another, so the Superfly would be the Elite. It would be, that could be the one that had, Zoom Air in it. The Jumbo could be getting an Elite, whatever they want to call it, a super duper uber version that had Zoom Air in it. And the Phantom or whatever comes after the Phantom GT2 would have, the DF would have, I don't know, Zoom Air in it. That could also be interesting that we see, that you can choose between the Zoom Air unit and the normal tooling. That could also be quite an interesting, because the feel is just different. Yeah,
personally, I would love that.
Yeah.
However, I think I would want that based on certain conditions, and that is that the pricing structure needs to make sense. Because if you were around back in the Elite Series days of Nike,
didn't make sense.
And you remember the Elite Series prices, where a Superfly was $400.
Yeah.
And an Elite Series Tiempo or an Elite Series T90 was like $350.
Yeah.
Like that is too much money for an inline model.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. And I just don't hope they don't go over. But then again, the Zoom Ultras were what, $350. So I mean, and that's the concept.
But
that's
as a limited, when you make 1,000 pairs, I know not everybody understands the manufacturing aspect, but when you manufacture something in small quantities, it's far more expensive to do. That's just how it is. And when you talk about the amount of research and development of a technology that I do believe is going to make its way onto inline products from Nike. But if you just think about the amount of money that they've spent up until this point to put it in that football boot and create that product, to make 1,000 pairs, they're probably not making any money on the 1,000 pairs at $350.
Yeah, but
this is purely a marketing thing to drive hype.
But I agree, they should, maybe in slightly different variations, they should slap it into everything they have, because this is this is such a unique technology, and it's unique to only Nike, and it's associated also, of course, with all of Nike's other stuff in basketball and lifestyle, and you name it, they've got it with Zoom Air in it, right? And I think that would be a very clever move, because that would set them apart from what Adi are doing with Carbitex and all that stuff. Yeah, slap it into everything.
And I think that's what Nike needs right now. I think that's where Nike has struggled in the last little bit, is they don't have that signature technology anymore that they did have with the Elite Series and the carbon fiber sole plates that they also had with the introduction of Flyknit, right? Yeah. Now everyone makes a knitted football boot. That's not a draw anymore. So I think Air Zoom Tech, like you said, nobody else has this. It would draw a lot of people to Nike, just not even for the quality of the product, but just for curiosity's sake.
Exactly. And just, if you have a pair of Air Maxes and you enjoy that, I mean, why would you not go and get a pair of Jempos with a Zoom Air tooling in it? Or a pair of Mercs, or a pair of Phantoms, whatever they slap it in, right?
Yeah.
Right. So on that note, let's round it off. That was a bit of an episode where we just went everywhere. And we talked about everything there was to talk about. It's been a long one. We do apologize. We'll try and be shorter next time. But let us know what you think of the Adidas Rihla Ball in the comment section right down below. You can, of course, go to unisportstore.com and buy it right away. Shameless plug. Also, make sure that you are subscribing to the Boot Nerds podcast so you actually get a notification when we post. Leave us a like on the video if you had a good time. And if you want to see more and hear us ramble even more than this one, go follow Josh on his personal channel. Follow me and us on Unisport. And with those words, I've been JayMike, and I approve this message. Cheerio.
Thanks.
See you next time. Thanks. That was simple. Thank you.